to be here today. It's been a long time coming, and it's so exciting to see so many people out here. First, what I want to do is recognize a few people, and I will qualify at the beginning. I'm sure I'm going to miss someone, and I probably could recognize every single person here for all of their work, but we would be here forever. So very quickly, I want to recognize Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, Molly McGarrick, and crew. We have our Agricultural Secretary, Michael Skuse. We have Pro Tem of the Senate, Dave Cicola. We have Senator Stephanie Hansen. We have Senator Kyle Evans-Gay. We have Representative Franklin Cook. We have from DENREC Deputy Secretary Lisa Bourne-Ogden. And our Division Director of the Division of Climate, Coastal, and Energy, Dana Cobb, without whom we would not be here today. And then we have a few other folks I want to recognize. I see Sherry Evans-Stanton from the Chapter Director of the Sierra Club of Delaware. Joanne McGeoch, who is the Interim Executive Director from the Delaware Nature Society. Peggy Schultz from the League of Women Voters with her many signs. I believe we have Dana Viron, Professor and Chair of the UD Climate Hub, and many, many more folks here and throughout the agenda. If I see others, I will make sure I give a shout out. I also want to give a special welcome. I think Mayor Mike Caranta was coming. I heard he was making his way. I have not seen him yet, but to Mike and all the other city representatives, thank you. Oh, I knew he was on his way, and there he is. He's always a man of timing. Mr. Mayor, thank you. I want to thank you and the rest of the city officials for hosting us here for this event today. I will get back to the city of Newcastle in just 1 second. But in a few minutes, Governor Carney will announce a major step in years of work by the state and many of its partners to address the impacts of climate change in Delaware. These partners include all of you, and thank you very much for joining us. Now, as I promised, back to the city of Newcastle, who are in the process of installing charging stations for electric vehicles, including one just across the way in the parking lot. We are pleased that our Clean Transportation Program was able to assist with the funding of that project. We've also worked with Newcastle in their efforts to improve resiliency to the impacts of climate change as a historic shoreline community. And they have invested $5 million in a dike system. So we thought it would be a fitting place to hold this historic announcement. Governor John Carney has been a leader throughout his career, both locally and nationally, on mitigating the causes of climate change and addressing the impacts to our state and country. He joined the U.S. Climate Alliance at the beginning of his administration, and shortly thereafter directed us to develop the next generation of climate plan for Delaware. It's my honor to introduce Governor John Carney.
Thank you very much, Secretary Garvin. Good morning to all of you. What a beautiful day here in Old Newcastle. This is a place that has a special place in my heart. Many of you know that my wife Tracy grew up here and lived not far from here down on the Strand. This Battery Park, the path that goes around it, is a place that we've enjoyed for years. So it is a place. It is also the colonial home, the colonial capital of the state of Delaware, and very important in that role. I don't think that our founding fathers could imagine the challenges that we face with climate change and our plan today to address it. I want to thank Secretary Garvin and all of you for coming. You might think that this is a cabinet meeting, so we have about half the cabinet here. Certainly the responsibility for this plan involves so many members of the cabinet, all of the cabinet, and all of you. I remember when I was in high school and college, there was a bumper sticker that read, "Think globally, act locally." It was really struck me at the time that we had environmental issues that were global in nature, but that required all of us to take individual action in our own lives, in our own communities. And today we are announcing Delaware's Climate Action Plan, which is our plan to move forward on addressing the existential threat of climate while international leaders gather in Glasgow, Scotland. I think appropriate for that motto. The motto, as I understand it, has been changed to act globally and act locally, and I think that's appropriate as well. I think it's important for me to take a moment to thank those advocates that are here with us today for thinking globally and acting locally for as long as I can remember. We appreciate you bringing the signs with you. Thanks to our leaders in the Delaware State Senate and our member here, Representative Cook from the House. Particular recognition of Senator Hansen for her leadership on all issues environmental. Yes, you can put your hands together. All of us elected officials, when we took office, we take an oath that pledges, and I quote, to respect the right of future generations to share the rich, historic, and natural heritage of our state. There's nothing more important to that oath than recognizing the threat that climate change poses to Delaware and all of our responsibilities to address it. It means taking action to protect our natural environment and prepare our state for the future. And it's going to take all of us, and that's why we have so many of our cabinet secretaries represented today, and you'll hear from them. Climate change is a threat. It threatens our $3.5 billion tourism industry and the 44,000 jobs that go with it. It threatens our $8 billion agricultural industry, Secretary Skuse, and the several thousand family farmers that make it go. Rising sea levels put us at risk, communities across our state. More than 17,000 Delaware homes, nearly 500 miles of roadway, and thousands of acres of wildlife habitat are at risk of flooding. We unfortunately saw the reality of that in Wilmington just recently with the big storm, displacing dozens of families and ravaging their homes in neighborhoods that, to my recollection, haven't been flooded in the past. The past decade was the hottest on record here in Delaware. Sea levels are rising at an accelerated pace. Heavy rainfall and severe storms are becoming more frequent. These changes and the resulting impacts will get worse if we don't act and act now. Almost every neighborhood and town in Delaware is vulnerable to climate change. You don't have to be a scientist to think about the potential impact here in this beautiful place in Old Newcastle. For climate action to benefit all Delawareans, the needs of residents, especially those who may be disproportionately impacted in climate change, who live in those vulnerable communities, must be understood and addressed through engagement and partnership. Delaware's Climate Action Plan identifies practical and common sense strategies we can take to improve our state's resilience to climate change impacts and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we need to do both. We have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and we have to make our communities and our infrastructure more resilient. The plan builds off of decades of work, as Secretary Garvin mentioned, and I know there are a lot of folks from DENREC here. Put your hands together for all that work that they've been doing over those years. The plan sets Delaware on course for continuing climate action in the decades ahead. We've made some progress for sure, particularly in the electricity generation side, but we need to make more progress on the transportation side. And Secretary Majeski is here and her team is ready for that. In June 2017, I announced that Delaware was joining the U.S. Climate Alliance, a coalition of states committed to upholding the Paris Agreement to combat climate change. I said that as country's lowest lying state, and with 381 miles of coastline, climate change is a very real threat to our future. A key commitment of that alliance was to pledge to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Way to key the geese for. That's pretty good. Sean, your guys are on it. Fish and Wildlife, the Division of Fish and Wildlife, right here. A key commitment of the alliance, the Climate Alliance, was a pledge to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by at least 26% from 2005 levels to 2025. We've also just recently passed legislation to increase our renewable portfolio standard to 40% by 2035. Objectives that we can certainly meet. Many efforts are being taken every day by state agencies, local governments, business leaders, and individuals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And we're making good and steady progress, but we have a ways to go, particularly, again, on the transportation side. Delaware's Climate Action Plan outlines the path forward to reach our goal and to go beyond. We're going to do our part here in the state of Delaware. Strategies in the plan that I mentioned, that I have a copy right here, again, can be implemented over time as resources, data, and partnerships develop. This has to be an ongoing, long-term commitment. Taking the actions highlighted in the plan to reduce emissions will allow Delaware to meet or exceed its 2025 reduction target, its 2040 RPS target, and will set us on a path to make further emission reductions in the years ahead. As I said, we've made progress, but we have a lot of work to do. At one level, it seems really complicated. The science around it, the approaches to eliminating carbon emissions to the atmosphere, all the different things that we need to do. But for me, it's really a pretty simple thing with respect to our obligation. And I go back to a visit that I had at North Star Elementary not long after I became governor. And there were two things that were part of that conversation. An earlier visit to North Star, and then the later visit with 5 little girls who had started a initiative that they called Help the Earth. Earlier, one of the little boys asked me what the most important job of the governor was. And it was just recently after I was elected. And oddly, after running unsuccessfully for governor once and running successfully for governor and meeting all the people across our state and telling them what I wanted to do as governor, I had never really thought much about that question. But it came to me that my job, I don't really do anything specific. That's supposed to be a laugh line.
I was laughing.
Were you laughing? No, my job is to enable other people to do their jobs and to do it better. And that's what I see my job here, what my job here is all about. The later meeting with the 5 little girls who were challenging me as their governor, they were 3rd graders, to think about the things that we have to do to address climate change. And all I could think about was my obligation in the oath of office that I took, my obligation to those 3rd grade girls at North Star Elementary, and our obligations as the people of Delaware to address this existential threat. This is our action plan for doing just that. And I couldn't be happier and more proud of our team for this announcement today. Thank you all for coming, and I'm going to turn it over to our Lieutenant Governor, Bethany Hall Long.
Thank you, Governor. I've got a couple nice things to say about the Lieutenant Governor, so I thought she wouldn't mind if I jumped in. Before I do that, I do want to recognize Kate Hackett has joined us from the Delaware Wildlands as well. As Lieutenant Governor, Bethany Hall Long has led the fight to make Delaware stronger and healthier. As a trained nurse and health scientist, she understands how climate change can negatively impact the health of Delawareans and the importance of taking action to mitigate those negative impacts. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant Governor Bethany Hall Long.
You didn't mention the weather today.
I figured I'd leave that up for you.
He left it. The weather. There's an inside joke that Governor Carney and Secretary Skew started years ago about the weather between each other. So I will take credit today for the weather. Thank you. So, yeah, when it's a good day, I'll take the credit. As I sat here today and was thinking and looking at this incredible audience, and thank you, Governor, for the opening comments and laying the table, I think about the African proverb, we are to treat the earth well. It is not given to us by our parents, but it's on loan by our children. And I look at our Secretary of Health who has her daughters here today, and it really is, as the governor said, about future generations in the long term and about our public's health, as you mentioned, and the impact with the economy and the environment. As I think back to, and I look at my colleagues from the General Assembly, the House and the Senate, and stakeholders, my first meeting when I returned to Delaware with the League of Women Voters was around environment, and Peggy Schultz, you were present. I think to the many years of studies, as the governor indicated, lots of planning. We've had sea level studies, we've had carbon emission studies, whether in the House or the Senate, and debates. Today it is incredible, and I thank you to DENRAC and to our Department of Transportation and Health and Ag who are coming together with this roadmap to help and protect generations ahead. And I just want to say it's a delight to be here. I cannot wait to continue to roll the sleeves up into the call to action. I think about, as I look at our children, I think about the importance, we're going to hear from Secretary Majeski in a moment, regarding electric vehicles and carbon emissions. You might say, well, the link to kids, we have over 20,000 children with asthma in this state and 75,000 adults. Carbon emissions are huge. Only 1% of our community has electric vehicles. And so it's awesome to know that our city here with our mayor and the council members are going to have those plants and charging stations. And there's things we can do as partners. So whether it's the sea, our air, our water, whether it's our solar plans, our energy, it all comes together. And again, to my incredible Senate colleagues, my Senator Hansen, who is my senator where I reside, we really do have to come together and have that long-term vision. So today, I am delighted to be here, part of the planning process to really protect Delawareans and, again, recognize the real impacts, whether it's asthma, cancer, you name it, the real impact in the long haul that this is going to save on our community. So I thank you, and I'm going to turn this back to our incredible MC, our Cabinet Secretary, Sean Garvin.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Few state agencies have to deal with impacts of climate change on Delaware as much as our Department of Transportation. Secretary Nicole Majeski took over the department in January after serving as Deputy Secretary. She also has deep roots in Newcastle County, where she served as Chief of Staff for 7 years. The impacts from climate change take a toll on our roads, bridges, and other infrastructure, but DelDOT not only tackles the problems of today, but is also acting to reduce emissions and increase resiliency now. Let me introduce my colleague and friend, Secretary Nicole Majeski.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Secretary Garvin. I'm honored to be here today with all of you, with Governor Carney, with Lieutenant Governor Hall Long, and so many representatives of our other state agencies and stakeholders, which really does speak to the gravity of this issue and the commitment that we're all making to address it. Earlier this year, we established a division within DelDOT solely focused on transportation resiliency and sustainability, which is being led by one of our DelDOT engineers, Jim Pappas, and Stephanie Johnson, who are hiding over there. I do want to recognize them. We've estimated that there's more than $1 billion worth of our existing infrastructure that is being threatened by sea level rise. We are seeing the strength of 100-year storms happen more frequently, and more of our roads are being flooded on beautiful sunny days due to tidal flooding. We need to be taking a hard look at how we can mitigate these impacts and strengthen our infrastructure. We also recognize that transportation is the leading cause of greenhouse gas emissions, and we need to be doing more to address this, especially when it comes to our public transit vehicles who operate long hours, and throughout our communities. In addition to Delaware's Climate Action Plan, we've also signed on to FTA's Sustainable Transit for a Healthy Planet Challenge, which really encourages transit agencies to be taking bold action and investments to cut our greenhouse gas emissions. To date, we've converted over 309 of our paratransit fleet that was gasoline powered over to 100% propane. And by next year, 10% of our fixed route buses will be all electric, which are also being deployed in our highly densely populated areas throughout the state. Yay! Thank you. We couldn't get a bus down here today. We got some of the electric vehicles, but the bus wouldn't fit. So between our electric buses and the propane conversion, we've already reduced greenhouse gas emissions by over 25,000 metric tons, but this is just the beginning. We're also focused on the electrification of our infrastructure, as the Lieutenant Governor mentioned, by working with our stakeholders and with DENREC on installing EV charging stations throughout our transportation network to make this more convenient for our constituents. So as the governor said, this is a serious challenge, but we are committed to working with DENREC and with all of our stakeholders on being part of the solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I do want to recognize Tony DePrima joined us, who is the Executive Director of the Delaware Sustainable Energy Utility. This is actually my speaking part in the agenda, so I'm switching from MC to speaker. Delaware's Climate Action Plan is a culmination of an over 2-year-long effort that included input from experts, state agencies, stakeholders, community groups, and residents throughout the state. The plan builds on decades of foundational efforts and current best available science to show the impacts of climate change on Delaware and the threats we face if we fail to act. It lays out a clear path on forward actions we can take to cut emissions and increase resiliency. The greatest threats from climate change differ depending on where you are. Coastal towns are experiencing sea level rise. Our farming community is threatened by saltwater intrusion, changing growing season, and losses due to extreme weather events. Urban areas may be seeing their infrastructure overwhelmed more often by flooding, or businesses and residents facing higher utility bills due to higher temperatures. And health impacts from excessive heat, vector-borne diseases, and food shortages, just to name a few. The impacts may differ, but we all face them, and we must all work together to address them. That is why a guiding principle of Delaware's Climate Action Plan is to ensure that climate action is engaged, empowering, and equitable. Equity starts with ensuring everyone has a seat at the table and that their concerns are heard. In working towards that goal, Delaware's Climate Action Plan is also available in Spanish. And we are partnering with the Delaware State University to research and identify ways that we can improve our outreach to all communities. DENREC has a long tradition of public engagement to ensure the wise management, conservation, and enhancement of the state's natural resources, but we can always do better. These efforts will also help us as we work to identify opportunities to reduce emissions and expand programs we already have in place. Energy efficiency measures can be put in place relatively quickly, and existing programs can be expanded. Among our existing programs, from January through September this year, our Green Energy Program approved more than 360 solar and geothermal grants totaling more than $2 million. Over the same period, our Energy Efficiency Investment Fund has supported 76 individual projects that will save businesses a combined $2.8 million in energy costs. And our Weatherization Assistance Program, which helps low-income families make their homes more energy efficient and reduce energy bills, has helped almost 100 Delaware families this year. We have made significant progress, but much more needs to be done. We must also do more to improve our resiliency to the impacts of climate change we are already witnessing. Maximizing resiliency to climate change impacts now better prepares us for extreme and unexpected events, including avoiding property damage and loss, direct and indirect business interruptions, and human death and injuries. State agencies are uniquely positioned to lead the resiliency effort by providing resources, training, and promoting cooperative efforts among all levels of government. At DENREC, our Sustainable Planning section provides land use, planning, and develops expertise to help local governments reach Delaware livable goals. The cities of Newcastle and Lewis and the town of Slaughter Beach are among local governments we have worked with through the Resilient Communities Partnership. Local governments depend on state agencies for this type of support in their efforts to deal with climate change. They also look to us to help with Delaware-specific research that provides increased clarity on the most effective solutions to the issues the state is facing related to climate change. Those solutions don't always come easily, but they are there. Working together and using the Climate Action Plan as our GPS, we can move climate action forward in Delaware. One way we're working together is through partnership with institutes of higher learning, including our partners at Delaware State University. Dr. Tony Allen, the university's 12th president, became the university's 12th president in 2020. Dr. Allen is the founding president of the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League, co-founder of Public Allies Delaware, a chair emeritus of the National Urban Fellows, and as president, he is committed to making Delaware State University the most diverse, contemporary, historical black college and university in America. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Dr. Tony Allen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I was telling the governor that I literally was baptized in that river. He said you probably don't want to do that now, but nonetheless, it's good to be home. I am from Newcastle, as most people know, and before I was here, I was at William Penn High School recruiting some students. And when I think about this day and how important it is, I think about communities of color in particular and how much they are affected by these kinds of things, but are often not at the table. It's very important for Delaware State to be a conduit to make sure that those folks are at the table at the earliest stages, including while they're in school. And we haven't always been particularly focused on climate change at Delaware State University, but over the past 5 years, we've gotten much, much better. And we know the reasons why we need to get better. Because when things happen, particularly the flooding that the governor alluded to in Wilmington, that is directly impacting families' ability to be successful, to take the advantage of the next logical steps for their students, to make sure that they are well cared for. So when we think about this particular effort, we look to it through the lens of our own mission. You'll note that we have a partnership with Exelon and the Renewable Energy Center that we've had since 2017. Our partnership with the USDA through the Climate Hub Demonstration Center at the university has been strong and has continued to capture national attention. We just launched our Global Institute for Equity, Civil Rights, and Inclusion and are getting significant results there as well. And as the Secretary mentioned, I'm particularly proud of our new relationship with DNREC that is really going to those lower resource communities, telling them about the effects of climate change, but more importantly, getting them in the game so that they can be a part of the solution. So as we think about this glorious day and what it means for all of us, I'm reminded of an event I attended just yesterday in Washington, D.C. It was the dedication of the HBCU National Center. And that particular event was to highlight the inaugural class of the National Center, which are young people from HBCUs that are interested in serving as staffers in Congress. One of those young ladies was from Kentucky State University and told us at the time that her biggest interest is climate change. But nobody in her community even understands what that means until they have to understand the devastation that it causes. We can't have that happen in any community, in our community. And I'm fortunate that we have the kind of leaders we have at the table that recognize that we're only as good as the least advantaged among us. We're only as good as the least advantaged among us. So let's take this unique opportunity from the governor, the lieutenant governor, Secretary Garvin, all the secretaries listed, my dear friends in the Delaware General Assembly, and make this a clarion call for the entire whole of the Delaware communities. God bless you and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. One of the things you're first taught when you're a cabinet secretary is do not disagree with your boss. However, I will say, Dr. Allen, probably safer to get baptized in this now than when you got baptized. But we still have a lot. We still have a lot more work to be done. Strong partnerships are essential to ensuring equity in climate action. They also help increase awareness about some of our existing programs that help businesses and individuals across Delaware improve energy efficiency and reduce emissions. One nonprofit that has benefited is the Delaware Historical Society. As a nonprofit dependent on community support, saving money on energy costs helps provide more resources for the Delaware Historical Society to fulfill its mission on preserving and promoting Delaware's history, heritage, and culture. The Delaware Historical Society received over $30,000 in 2 DENREC energy efficiency investment grants, better known as EAF, to upgrade an old natural gas-fired furnace and a gas-fired boiler. Please welcome Delaware Historical Society Director, Dr. David Young.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. We're looking forward to a historic reenactment of that baptism at some point here in historic Newcastle. And on behalf of the Delaware Historical Society, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today, and for the administration, the Lieutenant Governor and Governor Carney for your investment in this. I'm actually speaking on behalf of business that benefits from the kinds of programs already in place. And we have 9 historic buildings that we own and operate at the Delaware Historical Society in Wilmington and also on the Strand in Newcastle. And that means we're continually adapting them because nonprofit is a tax designation. It's not our management philosophy. And we had to update 2 outdated AC systems in 2 of our historically certified buildings, and we replaced them with new energy efficient systems, in part thanks to grants from the Energy Efficiency Investment Fund. The Reed House in Newcastle is a National Historic Landmark, the George Reed House and Gardens. And in fact, there's actually damage from last weekend's river rise through the flooding still evident on the Strand right across the street from the Reed House. So these impacts are here and present as we speak. And we also updated the Thomas Cox House, built in 1801 in Wilmington, to become the Delaware Center for Jewish History. And both buildings have added these new units that are split systems, state-of-the-art, energy efficient. And we're looking forward already to energy consumption and operating costs going down. The Reed House and the Cox House are historic structures, so to do this required a fair amount of creativity and sensitivity and very careful placement of the systems and design for minimal impact on the building's historic fabric. And our contractor, EDIS, for the Cox House just received a Historic Preservation Award from the Delaware Contractors Association for this work. So it is creative and adaptive, and it couldn't have been easier with the Energy Efficiency Investment Fund. And we, as mentioned, we gained over, one project was $2,500, the other was $29,000 from the fund at 2 of the historic properties. And we've replaced these systems with ways that are actually going to lower the environmental impact, keep it cleaner to maintain, and lower our operating costs. The application process is straightforward. Businesses can apply. Any questions that we had were rapidly answered by the staff. And we want to thank the DENREC and the EEIF Fund for the program that's been in place for several years. The assistance and support help us fulfill our mission. One way to think about historic preservation is the responsible management of change. And that means we're all in this to adapt and change, because the historic effects of this historic program will have historic impact in places like Delaware, where 5 centuries of history is present in our daily lives. So help us manage change and give life to history. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dr. Young. We're coming down the home stretch. I want to thank all of you and all of this morning's speakers for providing examples of how climate change is impacting all of us. the steps that we are taking now to address today's challenges and the actions we look to pursue in the coming years. But before we conclude, I also want to take a moment to thank our team of dedicated professionals who put this plan together. These incredible professionals are from the Division of Climate, Coastal, and Energy, with some help from the Division of Air Quality and other talented professionals in and out of DENREC. Now, I could introduce them all by name, but Governor, we'd be here for another hour. So, so I was going to, if all the DENREC folks who were engaged in putting this together, if you could all please come up. As you can see why introducing all of them would have taken some time. Jameson, that includes you. Come on. We have, did Dana come up? Okay, you were being blocked. Kim Coles. I'm sure there are others who are still trying to hide, but I want to thank this group. We had a challenge back in the spring of 2019. The governor asked us to look at the future of climate change and how we'd get there, and we had a lot of conversations and a lot of discussions about how we'd go about doing it. Was it mitigation? Was it mitigation and resiliency and adaptation? And we decided that we really needed to look holistically at the climate challenges that we face. And so this group went to work, and many public workshops and working with consultants and working with the community and businesses. And at the end of the day, this is what we came up with. And so I couldn't be more proud of not only the professionalism, but truly the passion that went into this. And I hate to tell you guys, that was the easy part. Now we have to go out and implement it. And so I look forward to us taking action now to ensure the health and vibrant economy for future generations. For those of you who want to see it, de.gov/climate plan is where you can find it. Thank you all for coming. Congratulations to all of you who are involved in putting this together, and now the hard work begins. Thank you all.